But Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan. He told about the priest and the Levi that passed by when this man had been robbed and beaten. And a man of another race came by, another ethnic background came by, a Samaritan who was hated by the Jews of that day. And the Samaritans hated the Jews. And Jesus deliberately told the story about how the Good Samaritan helped this man that had been beaten and robbed. We can't do that in the world in which we live without God's love. But God will enable you to love beyond your capacity to love. He will help you to love your wife. He will help you to love your husband. He will help you to love your children. He will help your children to love parents with agape love, dominating. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, in that ye have agape, God's love for each other.
My name's Michael Gear. That's my wife Susan, and I had an organization in Harrisburg, started 36 years ago, called Pennsylvania Family Institute. But prior to that, lived in Pittsburgh in the North Hills, and was part of the group that helped start what was then the North Pittsburgh Crisis Pregnancy Center. I was chairman of the board, but it was really Susan that had the vision for seeing a pregnancy resource center start in the Pittsburgh area.
Up until that point, I think we would have considered ourselves pro-life, but we didn't really think about abortion that much. And during that time, it was as if God just turned the lights on in our hearts and minds. I guess being pregnant, the reality of what abortion was became really clear to me. There's a scripture in Genesis 6:6 that it says God's heart was full of pain, and that was concerning the things at Noah's time. But I felt like God gave me a little bit of an understanding of some of the pain that He also feels about the loss of all this human life and these children dying. It was a real motivating force for us to want to see God's glory in His image, these little image makers, and try to do something to turn the tide on that.
As we think back, and that was 40 years ago, Mother's Day, 40 years ago, that ministry was founded. But there was some time before that, before the doors were opened, before the building was leased, that people were giving generously, praying for this ministry to get a start, to be able to take a stand on the issue of abortion and to help women in need.
My name is Gail Donnelly, and I was the original director of the Monroeville Center the first 20 years that it was in existence, from 1987 to 2007. I was in my young 30s at the time, and we saw Silent Scream, the video Silent Scream, at our church. And it really had a significant impact on a number of us. So people in our church, which was the Mount Hope Presbyterian Church in Penn Hills, and folks at the New Life Presbyterian Church in Pitcairn, each began little ministries in our respective churches just to do pregnancy tests. It was very simple, pregnancy tests, and we're going to reach out and share God's love and the truth about abortion to some women. God led us to some people who led us to an organization called Christian Action Council. And they quickly referred me to several centers in the Pittsburgh area that were also beginning to start unbeknownst to me. And one of them was the North Pittsburgh Center, which Amy Shearing, the present director, was the director there at that time, the client service director. So between the organization of Christian Action Council and Amy's help, we began our center. But the dedication was to speak the truth in love to the young women that would come into the center about abortion, and then follow up with them throughout the duration of their pregnancy. We made referrals to community services. We did shepherding homes where girls actually stayed in our homes for periods of time. We did advocacy. Advocacy was a big part of the ministry then, where you really followed up with that woman and girl, a one-on-one situation with one of the volunteer advocates that really poured her heart and life into the girl as she prepared for a pregnancy. So it wasn't just about abortion, it was about being there for that woman.
Charlie's father and I were in a relationship in college, and I found out I was pregnant the same month that I graduated college. And he said, get an abortion. And I said, I don't believe in abortion. It was a lot of stress because he said, we're going to be done if you don't get an abortion. And his mother wanted the abortion. His father wanted the abortion. I called my mother. She said, get an abortion. Everyone I called said, get an abortion. I was just by myself with this. It was a very difficult time. And I found myself without a place to live. And I was pregnant. And the first 5 months, I didn't get any care, which I kind of held it to myself because I was afraid that someone would grab me and say, go get an abortion. And then at 5 months, I got prenatal care, and it was through the help of, back then it was the Crisis Pregnancy Center. I also got help because I needed a place to stay. So I was placed with a Christian family. And that's how I went through my pregnancy. It was a warm feeling to have someone just come in, and from there on, I was taken care of. And I had support, and I found the place, thank God.
When you think about the idea that 7,000 people are walking the streets or alive because of this ministry, you know, we often think about it as being babies, but you could meet a 30-year-old or close to a 40-year-old or a teenager, and those people were once little babies whose lives were saved because of this ministry.
Around the time I found out I was pregnant, I was beyond depressed. A few months before that, my dad had passed away, and I was sexually assaulted, and then found out I was pregnant. I was 5.5 weeks pregnant, and I got my first ultrasound at Women's Choice Network. So after I got the test and the ultrasound, they brought Miss Jen in, and she just educated me. But on top of that, she read scriptures with me. And basically she just told me, even though my story wasn't, you know, the fairy tale, she just let me know that my child was still a blessing, and that she would support me any way that she could. And that's what made me choose life. Just knowing that God gave his only begotten son so that I should live. So why would I sacrifice my child and never knowing who she is, or, you know, what kind of warrior she would be in God's army? Like, it's just, all of those things went through my mind. Like, God gave his only begotten son so that I could live. Why would I rip and strip away one of his soldiers?
When I first heard about my mom being assaulted and I was the baby from that assault, I don't know, like, I just felt really like weird about it at first, but I felt like glad she like was comfortable enough to tell me about it. At times, like, I wonder how could you love a baby from a monster? I just feel like that's really hard to care for a child from someone who assaulted you, but she did it, and I'm really happy she did. Yeah. No, I don't want to be just the child. I'm her daughter, not just like the baby that was from an assault.
So when I think about choosing life over abortion, first off, she saved my life. Like I said, I was beyond depressed from losing my dad, then being sexually assaulted. Literally felt like I had no reason to live. And God was like, I'm bringing purpose back to your life.
As you think about the amazing impact of Women's Choice Network, just beyond what it was originally founded for, we founded a crisis pregnancy center. And the vision and the leadership of that organization over these 40 years has just had such a massive expansion in terms of the impact it's having on people's lives. Again, with clothing and parenting and the gospel being shared to people, and the babies that are born from the babies who were saved at the pregnancy care center. I mean, think about that legacy. I think of a family tree where the roots going out that just are immeasurable. So I don't know that we can even quantify. We talk about 7,000. It could be 7,000 or 70 times 7,000 or whatever that is, because God's impact way beyond, because of the prayers that people have offered, because of the money that they have been given, because of the volunteer hours, the reach of God in terms of making an impact are just beyond anything that we can imagine.
Since 1985, we've been telling the stories of our clients. Moms and dads who were facing a decision they never wanted to make. In the midst of an unplanned pregnancy, they were considering abortion. So our centers opened in 1985 and in 1987 to be a beacon of hope, to come alongside of these families and support them throughout their pregnancy and beyond. Every donor, every supporter, volunteer, staff member, board member has left their fingerprints on the lives of these families. The fingerprints you leave are unique, permanent, indelible, and eternal. Your partnership in this ministry has left a legacy that can never be undone. Inside the centers, we often see the faces of moms, the images of the ultrasound on the screen, even newborn babies when moms come to visit us. But if we stand back and take a longer view, we see not only lives saved, but lives lived. And if you look closely, you'll not only see your fingerprints, but the very fingerprints of God.